We just think that it's normal to be burnt out, stressed out, tired, overweight. That's just considered normal because that's the majority of people's reality.
Why do you think that guys need to get to some rock bottom to make this change?
Personally, my ego was so fucking big that no matter what anybody told me, no matter how many times somebody told me, I knew what I was doing and I knew what was best for me. And so it really didn't matter what anybody said or how many stories I heard of other people fucking up. I am the type of person who had to experience that for myself. Now, whether or not the majority of other men are, have such a big ego to where they're just like, fuck you to everybody else. I think from my experience working with men, a lot of guys, they're afraid to give up the good to go for the great, right? Because in reality, like looking back to anybody in a third world country, like I was living a good life, even though I was stressed out, I was borderline depressed, I was having trouble sleeping, like all these things. I was living a good life, right? I had a good family. I was making money. And a lot of guys are afraid to give that up to go for what could be better because it's uncertainty. So they'd rather stay in the certainty of misery than go for the misery of uncertainty. So many of us are terrified of the unknown, right? So we look out into this sea of change. We might have, visions of what's possible, but until we have like a step-by-step plan or somebody to lead us, to show us the way, we don't want to take that leap ourselves because what if I fail? What if this goes wrong? What if I can't do it? What if everybody makes fun of me? So I think that's what it comes down to is they're afraid to give up their good life to go for the great. They're settling for average instead of chasing excellence. They're like comfortable.
It's like the devil you know over the perceived devil you don't, right? Like you can make up, because when it's unknown, I can make up all the worst case scenarios. And I will seldomly think about the best case scenarios. But if I'm living an experience and then I'm like, oh, I already know this. Like, yeah, when it's hard, I know how to be in those hard times, but I also know how to be in the good times. This is great for me. I think that's a big deal for sure.
Another thing is a lot of guys don't know how good their lives could be because their baseline has been the same for so many years. Like imagine eating McDonald's for your whole life, which I did like all throughout high school. Like I ate McDonald's. So that was my baseline. I didn't know that there was anything better than that because I felt what I thought was good on that. But there's a whole nother level. And until you've experienced that level, you don't even know what's out there. Right. So I think a lot of guys are in that situation because when I ask them like, hey, how do you sleep? They're like, oh, pretty good. How's your diet? Pretty good. How are your stress levels? Pretty good. No, the fuck they're not. Like I actually went out and interviewed people in San Clemente, in fact, and I was like, how's your sleep? On a scale of 1 to 10, nobody said higher than a 6 out of 10. Most guys that I interviewed and who I work with sleep no more than about 6.5, maybe 7 hours, and it's not quality sleep. They either toss and turn, they have trouble falling asleep, they wake up still tired, whatever it is. So sleep sucks. Anybody who says their diet is pretty good is pretty full of shit, right? So, especially in the confusing world of nutrition, like there's so many things. So unless you're dialed in on that, you don't know how good you could feel when you've optimized your nutrition specific to you. Like don't follow any headline. Nutrition is so highly individualized. So unless you've worked with a coach in the past who has done that for you, you don't know how it is to be optimized. So those are a couple examples of how we think we're doing well, but it's not, peak performance.
Yeah, that's a brilliant example too, by the way. The whole like you can live on a diet and there are days you feel like a shitty diet and you'll feel like that's good. And then but that's like your worst day on a good diet, like on a diet where you're cleaned out, you're eating healthy stuff, you're not eating GMOs and pesticides and shit, and like you're not causing inflammation on the microbiome. And then you're realizing, holy shit, that's a bad day, you know?
Dude, you know what's normal? What's normal for most guys is waking up still tired, unmotivated to get out of bed, foggy brain. They have trouble focusing on one task. They're, bouncing from thing to thing. They have some sort of digestive troubles because of their crappy diet. So their energy is low. I already got into the sleep. And also, most people hate their jobs, right? So they're stressed out, poor work-life balance. And because all the other men around them, even their friends, because they're all experiencing similar things, we just think that it's normal to be burnt out, stressed out, tired, overweight. That's just considered normal because that's the majority of people's reality, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, you know the saying, you're the sum of your 5 closest friends, right? Of the 5 closest people around you. It's the same shit.
So I'd actually like to offer a reframe of that.
Yeah.
So instead of you being the average of the 5 people with whom you spend the most time, I like to think about it as you are a reflection of the 5 people with whom you spend the most time, because winners hang out with winners, losers hang out with losers. If you're a loser, you're not going to be allowed to hang out with winners because they're not going to want anything to do with you. Like me now, anybody who takes my energy in any capacity, I don't want anything to do with you. I'm only focused on progress. How can I get better? How can my business improve? That's it. If you take from that in any way, if you take my time, energy, whatever, there's no place for you, right? So winners hang out with winners. So if you are not productive, if you're not healthy, if whatever, I guarantee you, most of your friends around you are going to be in that same position. Right.
Yeah. I think when someone came up with that, that's what they were actually getting at, is that's a reflection of you, because everything in your external environment is a reflection of your internal environment. It's the same thing when people drive around with messy cars or have messy rooms. You're telling me a lot about who you are internally.
That's an extremely underrated thing is cleanliness of your car, of your room, of your office. If you have a scattered brain and you can't seem to stay focused or productive on a task, I would be willing to bet that your environment is cluttered and that there's random shit everywhere. It's like you said, it's a reflection of what's going on in your head.
Yeah, no, it's so good, brother. That's a really good point. The other piece I wanted to touch on with you real quick, because, I find that drinking is a big thing. You and I both being former military guys, we know that drinking life. So like we understand it. And it's a heavy piece to that environment. But men in general, culturally, at least in Western culture, we're heavily involved in drinking as men. Like you said, we hate our Monday through basically Thursday, and then Friday and Saturday we get real excited because we get to numb out and hit the vices. Do you think part of that is like FOMO? Like we get FOMO from our friends if we don't do it with them? Or what do you think is kind of the programming behind that, other than just to numb out from misery?
For me, it was for sure. For me in high school, for sure. And even in the Marine Corps as well, if I would see on, a social media story that my friends were out having fun at a party, I would get FOMO. When in reality, it's like, is that actually what I want? I think so many guys, we just think because it's in the media, it's in the movies, it's glorified as the cool thing to do. We just accept that that's what we should be doing. But then if you actually ask yourself, how do I feel after a night like that? Like, is this actually what I want? And if you start to think about it, for me personally, it's like, not no. The answer is sometimes, right? Sometimes for me personally, I do like to go have those nights. Now, I don't remember the last time I got drunk, right? Like I'll still go out and have fun, maybe a glass of wine or two, but it's definitely not like it was back in the Marine Corps days where literally there was, in my head, there was no point to go out and drink unless I was getting drunk, right? So for me, it was a lot of FOMO, thinking that I wasn't cool if I wasn't out drinking. Right.
Yeah. I love what one of the pieces you just said here is now you check in with yourself, right? And you're like, what do I want, right? Like, what do I want out of this scenario? Or what do I want to feel like after this, knowing what the result's going to be if you go too far, if you hit it too hard, right? And even if you have guys like you, guys that have cleaned up their diet, guys that have cleaned up the way they live with that awareness, what are maybe some pieces that you can give to guys right now that can help them to check in with themselves and kind of overcome this FOMO?
How I do it is I'm learning to be more in tune with my intuition. So how I personally do this is when I have a decision to make, I will get calm, not be doing anything else, reduce external stimuli. So close my eyes, silence, just sit down, breathe, and I'll ask myself, the question, whatever it is, should I drink tonight? And then I'll wait to see what the corresponding feeling to that question is. For me, I've noticed that a slight elevating kind of tingly sensation around my neck and up into the temple area. It's difficult to describe, but I've noticed for me, that is a yes. What a no for me feels like is this kind of empty / uncomfortable gut feeling in the stomach area. So for me, it's still very faint most of the time. So I really have to pay attention. That's why I reduce external stimuli. So if you can get to that state, because we know what we should be doing, right? We have all of the answers inside. We don't need anybody else to tell us how to live. It's just that we've gotten so far away from how we should be living, from our intuition, and we're letting other people make our decisions, right? FOMO. Mm-hmm. So that's how I do it. If it's a decision that I'm going back and forth with in my brain, and most guys are very analytical, right? So we'll think about it in our head rationally. It's like, let's get out of our heads for a second. Let's think with our hearts, and let's ask our bodies what is right in the moment.